In a short session, lawmakers have to act and react quickly. It's a very busy schedule, and Governor Dannel Malloy is putting lawmakers to work with an aggressive and ambitious agenda, including the governor is calling on the General Assembly to eliminate a state mandate requiring a minimum of 1,248 state police officers. The police union filed a lawsuit over Malloy's 2011 layoff of 56 troopers because the state was already below the mandated level at that time. In truth, the minimum has never been met since it was imposed in 1998. The Public Safety Committee is expected to make a recommendation by March 15th. The governor says he does appreciate the work of the troopers and looks forward to hiring more in the future.
I don't believe that that's an item that, given all of the circumstances that we're dealing with currently, that should be in statute. I just don't think it's good public policy. We don't do that for most other professions in state employ.
Another hotly contested issue at the Capitol is a bill raising the state minimum wage. Fox Connecticut's John Charlton explains why restaurant owners think the bill is a recipe for disaster.
When you raise the minimum wage, there is more spending, and it's a good time for businesses.
If the research is right, it's a good time for a pay raise.
Moderate raises in the minimum wage do not lead to job losses, even during weak economic times.
Raising the state minimum wage 75 cents to $9 this year and another 75 cents next year is intended to make life more livable for the lowest paid workers in Connecticut. Labor Committee co-chair Zeke Zalaski supports the idea.
As we all know, it's very expensive to live in Connecticut.
And small business will point out how very expensive it is to do business in Connecticut. Restaurants claim to be the epitome of small business, and they're voicing the biggest opposition to raising the minimum wage.
Raising that just keeps people at the bottom longer.
Restaurants already lost the battle against paid sick time for their servers, kitchen staff, and busboys. The Connecticut Restaurant Association calculates that raising the minimum wage will end up costing an eatery with 30 servers more than $100 grand extra each year. The bill as written would also end the tip credit, which essentially allows restaurants to pay servers less than minimum wage because most servers more than make up for it in tips.
Our staff had made a mistake in the drafting of the bill, and in that we never intended on taking out the tip credit out for restaurant workers.
It might have been a misprint, but it's in the bill. Not only is it in the bill, but it's in the title of the bill.
But even with the tip credit, restaurants will still have to pay more, and that means so will diners with higher price menus.
They've already started to see them. This time they'll see them and they're going to have sticker shock.
Meanwhile, lawmakers have a lot to consider after beginning one of the most anticipated and sure to be emotional debates of the session. The Education Committee has heard from the governor, teachers, and other educators about how to reform teachers' evaluations and tenure. It was a marathon hearing that lasted well into the night. The stickiest issue will likely be the governor's call to reform the way teachers get tenure. Some teachers have felt demonized by the way Governor Malloy got the debate started on opening day by saying that under the current system, basically all a teacher has to do is show up for 4 years and tenure is theirs. Today, the governor tried to clarify his proposal to make teachers earn and re-earn tenure status.
It's amazing how many people will admit that there are teachers in buildings which they don't believe belong there, but because of this system remain there. And all I'm trying to say is that our students in the state of Connecticut deserve better than that.
He and the state's education commissioner say the proposal makes getting tenure more flexible. It would actually shorten the probationary period for teachers, would provide tenure to teachers within 3 years instead of 4 if they earn exemplary ratings, based in large part on the success of their students. If a teacher doesn't get tenure in 3 years, they would have 2 more years to try to get it, but after 5 years, they would be ineligible for tenure. After getting tenure, teachers would apply for and reapply for tenure every 4 years. The governor says it will also redefine what an inefficient teacher is so that it'll be easier to both support that teacher or, frankly, get rid of them if they're not cutting it. We spoke with Connecticut's 2012 Teacher of the Year about the proposal.
The bigger issue is what's being done to support newer teachers, especially younger teachers within those first few years, and issues related to professional development, induction and support. A lot of those issues that contribute to the culture of the school are really important.
The other controversial part of this proposal is how it increases the way student achievement is tied to teacher evaluations. There will be lots of debate over what exactly defines student achievement. Is it test scores? Is it each student's individual progress? We are finding out not all teachers agree on any of this.
How did the teacher that didn't do well, that they're saying, end up that way? Because of an administrator that gave them tenure in their first 4 years? So let's look at the administrators and say, are they doing their job? Because maybe this teacher isn't right for the school, but they got tenure. I've also seen teachers that were excellent teachers that had personality conflicts with the principal the first 4 years that did not get tenure. Both of those are wrong.
As a new teacher, I want that. Like, I want to be held to a high standard. I want to be pushed and tested, and I want to be offered professional development to better myself as a teacher.
Laurie Perez, Fox Connecticut News.
Now, lawmakers on the Education Committee barely went home when it was time to return for a second day of public hearings on the governor's education reform bill. Day two's focus was more on the financial budgetary aspects of the governor's bill. In other words, how much money your child's school district might get and how much their school might get.
The governor proposes an additional $50 million in educational cost-sharing funds, with wealthy districts getting no more and no less than they already get, modest increases for most of the suburbs, and more funding for the poorest school districts. But critics say property values should be left out of the ECS equation. Today, the governor's budget chief tried to explain how the governor wants the money distributed, focusing on Connecticut's lowest performing schools, a priority many support.
Nobody's a loser under this proposal. There are many, many winners, and there are some who are significant winners. I would point out that the significant winners tend to be the communities where the students have been losers for a generation.
Funding should be provided to turnaround schools in a way that's focused and directed at addressing the issues in those schools. And so the fact that the commissioner will have greater authority over the use of those incremental funds, we believe is critical.
The governor is also pledging increased funding for school choice. Another $5 million will help open new charter schools, and he wants to increase funding per charter school student to $11,000. Students in traditional schools get $14 grand from the state.
For example, my teachers presently are in terms of their salary, 20 to 25% below the regional average, and so they're staying on. But at some point, they have families, they have mortgages, they have car payments. I have to pay them a reasonable salary for them to continue the great work that they're doing.
The bill also encourages small school districts to consolidate services or face penalties if they spend more than the state average per student. Senate Minority Leader John McKinney says that will unfairly penalize small towns that often have higher costs.
We've seen regional school districts work because towns cooperate together, and we've seen towns gain efficiencies through incentives to do so. That's the better method.
The governor's education reform proposal is almost 200 pages long, so it includes a lot. And we're seeing from the massive crowds testifying both yesterday and today that while there is widespread consensus on many points, people have a lot to say about the finer details. I'm Laurie Perez, Fox Connecticut News.
That brings you up to date with lots of what's happening at the Capitol. Follow me on Twitter for the most up-to-the-moment updates. Don't forget, if you missed something here on The Real Story, you can now watch it online by going to ctnow.com. You can also catch us on YouTube. Thanks for watching this week's edition of The Real Story. We'll see you here again next week.